Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. In this second chapter of post-production, we're going to be going through some advanced techniques on how to remove flicker, how to remove objects from your scene like birds because they're everywhere these days, and we'll also be looking at how to denoise and also how to create masks as stylization tools for your color grading. On top of that, I'll also be showing you how to create hybrid time lapses using live action footage and time lapse mixed together. It's going to be exciting. Let's get into it. The first thing we're going to take a look at is how to deflicker, and deflickering in the past used to take a lot of time, and it was actually really cumbersome, and the results really aren't the best. But now, because of DaVinci Resolve, we really have the ability to come in here and remove flicker. I hate to say it, almost instantly. Actually, I don't hate to say it. I love to say it almost instantly because it's really a simple thing to do. We're going to look through our first shot right here, and this is a time-lapse shot in Shanghai, China. And when you're in a city environment, there's always going to be some kind of flicker because there's so many different light sources, whether it's fluorescent or incandescent lighting. You're going to see all of those lights just bounce around. And as you're looking here in the frame, we can see that there's just a lot of ambient light that's refracting off of the clouds, but it's creating kind of a nasty, glaring kind of issue because of the flicker. And what we want to do is we want to remove that. And the easiest way to do that is simply using DaVinci Resolve. And if you do have the studio version, you are going to have the ability to use deflickering, and I highly recommend you getting it because this is really a tool that every photographer and cinematographer and time-lapse photographer needs because it really just helps smooth out the image and creates a much more even exposure. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to our effects panel on the left-hand side. And if you're not familiar with it, it's pretty easy to navigate. You can even search for it. So I'm just going to type in deflicker with an F, and we got it right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply it directly to the image. And then once I do that, we can come over to our effects tab in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And you can see that we're already set up for a deflicker with time-lapse. And there's time-lapse, fluorescent lights, and advanced controls. Since we're doing time-lapse, you really don't have to do anything other than just click time-lapse, and it's just going to fix everything. It's the most amazing deflickering tool ever. So I'll come through this scene now. We'll play it again. You can see that it's absolutely beautiful. There's no flicker in the city. The light in the sky is beautiful. Everything is really well meshed together, and it's just creating a much more balanced image in this way. What we can do is a side-by-side comparison here, and you can see just the difference. So the right-hand side is non-deflickered, and the left-hand side is deflickered. And you can just see how much that light is pulsing on these buildings up here, as well as some of the stuff that's down by the river. But that just kind of goes to show the ease of use when it comes to using DaVinci Resolve for your time-lapse workflow process, and the ability to remove flicker is just like night and day. It's so easy. That pretty much does it for deflickering. Very quick, very simple, very easy. In the past, you'd have to go through and do a ton of different layerings using VFX and then blending things together, and it was just a pain in the butt. But right here, you don't have to do that anymore, and it really just makes for a much easier, much more conducive environment for creating and not having to worry about other steps. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to remove birds or objects from your scene, and this honestly couldn't be easier. It's very much like deflicker. There are a few extra steps to it, but ultimately, it should only take you a few seconds to remove an object like a bird, and the results are absolutely beautiful. So what we'll do is we'll come into the scene here. I'm going to find the bird that we have, and it looks like it's right there. So if I zoom in, we can see that there's a little speck right here, and that little speck is a bird that's flying through our frame. And what it's going to do is it's going to cause some issues, especially if we want to create a very clean, very smooth looking shot. So what we want to do is get rid of that. Now we have two methods to do this. We could apply a dust removal for the entire scene, or we can actually create a mask just for this area where the bird appears, and that's what I would really suggest, because what happens is when you actually apply it to the entire frame, what's going to happen is it's going to actually go through and remove other elements that may not be necessary to remove, and it's going to create some kind of artifact. So now that we've figured out where our bird is at, all we have to do really is create a mask around that bird and then apply a simple dust removal filter. So I'm going to add a new corrector because every time we want to create a new action, we need to create a new node. So I'm going to create a new node here. I am then going to come down to my power windows, which it looks like a little outlined circle up here. And I'm just going to choose the circle, and it's going to appear on my screen up in the top right hand corner. And I'm just going to apply this circle right over top of our bird. And then I'm going to take this mask or the power window and just make it so that it's just right on top of the bird. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want to get close enough so that the bird is covered in the center of the circle. And if I zoom in here, we can see that the bird is in the center of the circle. The next thing we want to do is we're going to come over to our effects panel. If your effects panel isn't opened, all you have to do is click effects. And then I'm going to type in remove. And what we want to look for is automatic dirt removal. And this is a very powerful tool inside of DaVinci Resolve, and it works for everything. Time-lapse, video, still imagery, whatever you want to do. And what this is going to do is actually come in there, and it's going to search the scene out and find anything that really shouldn't be there. If a speck of dust, or in this case a bird, pops up, what it's going to do is automatically remove it. So I'm going to pull this down to our node here, which is going to be on our power window. And all I have to do now is where it says dirt size threshold is I'm just going to reduce this. And as I reduce it, you're going to see that the bird just magically disappears. And this is really all you have to do. So if you've got a bunch of different birds in the scene, what I recommend doing is just masking out each of those individual birds, and then you can play it. Now, what's going to happen is when we play this is we should see a little circle pop up here because we don't have the right contrast on here. So I'm going to go through here really quickly, just apply a simple few things here so that we can kind of create just a basically graded shot. There we go. Using my parades on the right hand side, balance that. And now if I play this through, it looks pretty good. Now, there is a little spot that's coming down here, and that's where our bird removal is. And what we want to do is we want to add a deflicker on the end of our nodes. And we want to apply it at the end of the nodes because we want everything that's happening in the first node and the second node to take place first, and then we want the denoising. And that's going to create a better composite for our image so that everything blends together well, and it's just going to look so much better. So I'm going to create a new node, add a new node, corrector, and then we'll come back over here again, and we'll do flicker removal, and we'll do deflicker. We'll plop that on, and now if we come back and play this through our timeline, it looks absolutely beautiful. There's no birds flying through. The bird that we did have in the frame is gone, and the clouds are absolutely flicker free, and there's no issue of showcasing where we put our power window. So this is just a very easy way to remove an object. You can do this with dust specks. You can do this with birds. You can do this with people sometimes. You can do it with airplanes. There's a plethora of things that you can do, but it's probably one of the most powerful tools inside of DaVinci Resolve, and another reason why I highly recommend using it, because it works wonders, especially if you have like a scene that maybe you had shot years ago and you want to remove some birds or fix it up a little bit. This is a great way to clean up your frame and also make sure that everything looks right, and when you are distributing it to your client, that they get the best possible product. All right. So next we're going to move on to denoising. And denoising is a big thing that I like to add for the finishing of my shots. When I'm going through and I'm doing the color correcting and the color grading and any kind of extra mask stylization, I also end it with a noise reduction, because the noise reduction is what that's going to do, especially for low light scenes like this that are taken at night. You're going to see a lot of noise and grain in your shot. And for me personally, I like to have the cleanest image possible. And having the cleanest image possible comes with reducing the noise. Resolve does come with its own denoising tool, but I will say that it's okay, but it's not the best. Neat Video is by far the best denoising I've ever used, and I've used it inside of DaVinci Resolve, After Effects, and Premiere Pro, and it is across the board the best I've ever used. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to show you how to use it really quickly because it's very easy. That's the thing about this too. I really want to reiterate this to you guys is there's a lot of advanced features and a lot of advanced things that you can do that are actually very easy to achieve without a lot of time. So Neat Video is one of those things, and it really just helps clean up your image and just makes it look the best that it can be. So I'm going to come down to the bottom of our page where Neat Video is at, and I'm going to do Reduce Noise Video. I'll put that on. Now the next thing we want to do is come over to our Effects tab in the top right hand corner, and we want to prepare a noise profile. And when we click this, it's going to bring up a dialog box that's basically going to allow us to find the noise pattern inside of our scene. So we're inside of Neat Video right now, and this is kind of the layout that we have. And if we look down here between our Y, CR, and CB enhanced, we can see that there's definitely a lot of noise in our shot. So I'm going to select something that's over here that's near the highlights, but also near the shadows. And it's a 1.1. I'm going to go a little bit higher, 1.2, 1.3. I always want to look for something that's in the 1.5 to 4 range, because that's going to reduce the amount of noise that's in the higher levels and the lower levels together. But you also don't want to remove too much of the noise, because then what happens is you lose detail in the shot. So we want to retain as much detail as possible. So I'm going to build a profile, adjust the preview, And then from here, it's basically done. Now, we have the ability over here to add temporal filters anywhere from a radius of 2 up to 5. I don't recommend going up to 5 because that's going to reduce the amount of processing power you have, and it's going to be so slow to render. I mean, it could take you hours to render a 20-second shot. If we keep it at 2, what it's going to do is do enough noise reduction so that you can see it and it looks clean and it retains the sharpness and the detail in your scene, but it also leaves just a little bit of noise so that it looks more natural. If we took that all the way up to 5, it would literally just remove any and all things that look like noise, including stars sometimes, so you have to be careful. And that's why I think shooting at a radius of 2 is probably the best bet for right now. So I'll click apply. And then what we'll do is I will come back here and we're going to toggle this on and off. So I'm going to find an area because it's super clean right now, and I'll just come through here and remove this. And if you can see that on your screen, and it may be difficult to see on your screen, but once you do this, you're going to see all of the little pixels just disappear. The grain is gone, and what you're left with is just an absolutely beautiful image. And it's something that I always use on every time lapse, doesn't matter what it is, to remove as much noise as possible to create a very clean, very concise, and very beautiful looking time lapse. So that does it for noise reduction. Again, super easy. Really, there's no problem here. But now we're going to talk about adding stylization to your shot. And this is where you get to make the magic when it comes to how your frame looks, feels, and what the ultimate impression is of the shot that you're creating. Now, if I come through here, this is a shot that I took in the Swiss Alps of the Matterhorn. And it's an okay shot, but what I'm noticing with this obviously is that it's backlit, it's kind of flat, there's really just no depth to it. So what we want to do is we want to go back and we want to add depth to it. And the way that we add depth to that is by creating masks around areas that would normally have depth. In this case, the back end of the mountain right here should have a bunch of shadows here so that we can create some contrast between the rear of the mountain and the front of the mountain. And what I have over here is an example of something that I've done already, so you can kind of see the final product of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so we're going to get in it and start creating our masks to create a much more balanced image, something that's more contrasty, something that just pops. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new node, do one node, and this node is going to be our secondary layer. And the secondary layer is what's going to be our shadow in the shot. So I'll come back down to our power window or masks, and I'm going to use the pen tool here, and then I'm going to create the outline of where I think the shadows should be. So I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to follow the crag that's coming right down the edge of the Matterhorn. And then I'm going to come this way, come back up, come down, maybe come back down this way. And I kind of feel like Bob Ross in this instance. So we're going to basically be painting this mountain as if it actually had a shadow, which it doesn't. And we'll come through here, follow the contour of our mountain. And we want to make sure that we stay within the lines. And this can be done either loosely or perfectly. It really doesn't matter. Obviously, the more perfect you are with it, the more professional it's going to look. But for what we're doing here, this actually works out really well, just as this is. So what we can do now is actually add depth to our shot. And what I'm going to do is come over to our gain control. I'm going to reduce our gain a little bit. I'm going to create a lower lift. And I'm going to keep going just a little bit more, and then add some contrast to that. And then if we come back to our main shot, we can see like, okay, we've got a shadow here. But the problem here is we have really harsh lines. It's not blended very well. And quite honestly, it looks pretty bad. So what we need to do is we need to finesse the shot a little bit more. And what we're going to do is come down to our softness. And the softness is going to take that mask and it's going to elongate it just a little bit so that it creates a little bit of feathering on there. And as we do that, I'll come back over here. And now as you can see, it looks a lot better. We're getting to that point where we've created a shadow, but we can do even better. So we're going to go a little bit lower on our gain, a little bit higher on our contrast. I'm going to drop the gamma down just a little bit. We want to retain some of that detail in the mountain, but we don't need all of it. And now if I go back to the main and we play this back, okay, it's getting there. But the issue that we're having now is that there's not enough contrast in the main image to match the contrast of the secondary image. We have to come back to our main node and we need to adjust the settings to create a much better and more contrasty site. So I'm going to increase the gain a little bit. And then I'm going to drop the lift. I'm going to add some contrast to this. And now we're getting there. But we can see that the shadow is kind of interacting with this cloud a little wonky because we don't want the cloud to really disappear. We're going to go back, and I'm going to keep my frame on where the cloud is at. And I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to lift it up above the cloud, and we can actually come through here and delete it. That's the great thing about Resolve, is we can always come back and change it. Now if we come back through here and we play it, it's looking a lot better now. We're creating a lot more depth to our scene. What I will say is that it's a little dull, so I'm going to increase the saturation a little bit. There we go. I'm going to add some warmth to the entire scene. Bring it down, and we're getting there. Now, I think we're a little too dark over here, so I'm going to increase my gain just a little bit. Come back on this side, and then I'm going to increase our highlights a little bit. And this is really all just about kind of going back and forth and seeing what works best for the shot. Now, this is definitely not a template for all shots. Every shot is 100% unique, completely different, quite honestly, and it's really what you have to kind of pay attention to. But if you stay within the contours of the image, the areas you want to change, that's going to give you the best results. And this kind of reminds me of like working in the dark room in the old days, because what you could actually do is like mask out certain areas. You could increase the exposure, decrease the exposure, and then that would create depth. And what we're doing here is pretty much the exact same thing, but in a digital nonlinear way. So we can come back through here, finesse the shot a little bit more. But as I'm playing it, I can see that we are definitely getting a lot more contrast now, and the image isn't as flat as it was before. If I come through here and I disable our layer, we can see just how much we've come through on that image. And it's really about adding subtlety to it. We don't necessarily have to have a huge punch in, but just enough so that we can see what the image is going to look like. And that's really all we need to do. And I would be happy with this. I think we can do a little bit better job of blending together our right-hand side of the mountain. So I'm going to just add a little bit more contrast to that. So we can add that there, and then maybe just a little more warmth, a little less warmth. There we go. Create a little more balanced image. So now we're just creating a nice moody shot. One thing I also like to do is I like to add a vignette to things, because vignette's going to kind of create a much more narrow shot, and it's going to actually kind of showcase where we want the viewer to look. So I'm going to come back up to our effects tab. I'm going to type in vignette. Apply that there, and that's a little too much. So we're going to go and reduce this, increase the size a lot, change that, add some softness to it. And we just want it to be as if it was a little dim and a little dull. And now if we come through and play this back, it's looking mighty, mighty good. Now, we are getting a little bit of flicker here in the shadows, which is another reason why we're going to go through and add another node of deflickering. I highly recommend doing this pretty much to every shot you might have, because deflickering is just going to smooth out any exposure changes that might happen in your shot. Come through here. It does also use a ton of system resources again, so you may not see things back in real time. But now we're getting that really nice, beautiful contrast in there, and we're getting more depth, and it's just creating a much more dynamic shot. And that's simply just creating and or using masks to do this. So that's something that you can do on any kind of shot. You can even do it on motion control shots, which I will show you that in the second part when we talk about motion control. But this is really just an easy way for you to really manipulate the image or the scene that you want, and you can adjust everything to your liking. The next thing we're going to take a look at is how to create beautiful hybrid time lapses, and that's creating and meshing and composing both live action footage with time lapse. And the easiest way to do that, quite honestly, is just shooting your time lapse, and then as soon as you're done with that time lapse, just hitting the record button on your camera, preferably in 8K or the highest resolution that you have. And then when you're done with that, you pretty much have to come right back where we are right now in post-production and just blend the two images together. And this is really nice too, because a lot of times when you're dealing with water and time lapses, it just looks really bad. And I personally hate time lapsing water just because it just doesn't look that great, and it's hard to time the intervals along with the shutter speed, and it just kind of looks a little jarring sometimes. So a lot of clients nowadays are really requesting, at least from my end of the view, a lot of clients these days really want to see that really nice, beautiful smoothness. So what I'm doing is now actually just creating two hybrid layers. One is time lapse, one is live action, and this is going to create the best kind of both. this is going to create the best of both worlds realistically. So this is very easily done. So if I play this shot, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. But we've got live action birds happening down at the bottom. Taking a look at the frame as it's finally composed, you can see that our foreground is just full live action. We've got birds flying, people walking around, and it looks beautiful. And then in our background is our time-lapse plate, and that was taken over a period of about an hour or so. But meshing those two together, it creates kind of a fun little hybrid shot that really allows you to be like, ooh, what's going on here? But the water looks so much better, and it's not jarring, and it's really what we want to go for. So let's take a look at how that's done. All right, so we've got our two clips. I'm going to bring them in. I have our raw time-lapse clip on top, and then I have our bottom as our video layer. And if we look through this, we can see that obviously they're not lined up. So what we need to do is we need to line up our time-lapse shot to the live action shot. So I'm going to increase this to 1.2. If you're shooting an 8K scene, 1.2 is really what you want to be using. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my opacity. I'm going to change the opacity just to make sure that I can see that everything's lined up all right. And this does need to be as close as possible. So what I will do is come back in here and I will adjust the zoom just a little bit and bring it right down. And 1.190 is what we landed at. And that's creating a perfect mesh between the two images. So if I lower this and raise it, we can see that our image remains the same, but here's our live action layer and here's our time lapse layer. So the next thing we have to do is compose the two layers together and then we'll be done. I'm going to come into our color tab here. I'm going to create a new node. And before I do that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to switch the opacity back to 100%. So our top layer is our DNG layer or our raw time-lapse layer. And now what I want to do is create a power window. And I'm going to use the pen tool again. I'm going to come into our viewing screen and I'm just going to pen off an area that's on the boardwalk that has a straight line. And using leading lines or straight lines is great because it makes for a much better composition and it's less distracting when you're adding the two together. So now that I've created this, what I want to do is I need to add an alpha out. And adding an alpha out channel is telling the computer or telling DaVinci Resolve that it's going to just have the area that we have in the power window be in the shot. So I'm going to right click on my mouse, click add alpha out, and then I take from this blue box, I just drag my mouse cursor down and drop it right on that. And now we have our live action clip. But we can see that our time-lapse clip is actually on the bottom where our live action is on the top, and we need to reverse that. And that's easily done. All I need to do is come down to my power window settings and then click on the mask. And that's going to flop those two. So now the bottom layer is video and the top layer is time-lapse. If I come back to my original frame, I can play this through and scrub it. And I can see that I made some exposure adjustments in the shot in the frame, so I need to adjust that in the main layer. So I'm going to come back to the Edit tab. I'm going to reduce this a little bit, see where that's at. And now what we need to do is we need to match our time-lapse frame to our video frame, and we want to make a balanced image. Now, if you look at my timeline here, you can see I've got my DNG as well as my video. And we're going to start with our DNG first because that's going to be the one that I really want to make sure matches. So just like our basic time-lapse on how the process, I'm going to start with the gain. I'm going to add the gain just a little bit. I'm going to add gamma to it to give it some brightness. Bring the lift down, add some contrast to it. And I can tell that our bottom layer is much more saturated in orange or warmth. So I'm going to increase our warm tones a little bit up here. I'm going to increase our saturation to 75. And then I'm going to bring up the shadows quite a bit. Drop down our gain. As you can see on our parade, we're kind of peaking out in a couple spots. So I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Add some more contrast. I can scrub through. And because the scene is backlit, you know, obviously this is going to be something where you're going to have to open up those shadows a little bit more to get the information. But now we can come back to our video, go do the same thing. I'm going to increase the shadows a little bit in here. Reduce the highlights a little bit, add some gamma, and then also add some more warmth to it to more match with the top frame. And now if I come through and scrub, we've got a really beautiful shot. And we're merging both of these together and it looks seamless. Now, one thing that you're going to notice is that there's a lot of birds in this shot, and we can take what we just learned, how to remove birds, and do the exact same thing here. So what I want to do is in our time-lapse frame is create a new node. I'm going to create a new corrector. I'm going to come in here, and we're going to power window off the entire top of the frame here. And I'm doing that because I just want anything that appears in the top there, which will be a bird, to be removed. So I'm going to come in, create a power window. This can be done loosely. It doesn't have to be done super accurately. And I'll come through here, do that, and then we'll come back to our spot and do remove, automatic dirt removal. We'll apply that to our mask, set it to 0, and now if we come through and do it again, there's no more birds in our shot. So we're just cleaning up the image as we can, and this is another great example of how to do that. And what's going to happen too is there might be a little bit of flicker in here as well. So guess what? We're just going to add another node at the end. That's going to be a corrector. We'll add deflicker. And this is going to deflicker our time-lapse shot. And now if we come back, it looks great. It looks like butter. And this is just kind of showing you the power that DaVinci Resolve has, especially if you really want to go in and manipulate your image and really come up with something wondrous and something incredible. And there's so much that you can do. Honestly, your imagination is the limit when it comes to how you can edit and manipulate your scene. But hopefully some of these tools have helped you out. In our next chapter, I'll show you how to create beautiful day-to-night sequences using a variety of different tools and methods. So if you want to do manual ramping, or if you want to do ND ramping, or you want to do multi-layer ramping, I'm going to show you how to do that. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.